Welcome, everybody, to today's live stream. My name is Raj Kara, and I'm joined today by Patrick Burns. So, just a quick housekeeping note, this is live. I am broadcasting from my home in Maryland, and Patrick is in Austin, Texas right now. And so, we're going to talk about how to really build your brand on LinkedIn. Welcome, Patrick. Good to have you here.
Great to be here, Raj.
And Patrick has built his brand on LinkedIn. He's got over 100,000 followers, and he built it. And he's going to dissect how he actually did that, including the way he started his marketing agency. And so let's get right into it. I know we're going to have people with questions and so on. So if you do have any questions, just post them in the comments, regardless of where you're watching from. We've got this streaming on multiple platforms, and so we'll be able to answer your questions there as well. So, Patrick, just a quick background. Just share a little bit about your B2B marketing journey. What led you to focus on LinkedIn for brand growth?
Well, I originally did start in the B2C space, actually. So I did a tech startup. I worked at a tech startup that was basically Uber for lawn care and snow removal. That was back when I graduated college back in 2015. And then I worked on a platform that was basically facilitating the relationship between online personal trainers and clientele. I did those for about a year and a half. Learned a lot of valuable lessons with that. Wasn't successful in some regards, but what I figured out was I was naturally good at marketing and branding. Those were my natural skill sets.
Yeah.
So from there, I pivoted to start my own agency. Instead of trying to take my moonshot with this $1 billion idea, I'm like, let's just get tangible cash flow. Let's address it, market that has a need that I know for sure they do. And then I would be kind of back and forth between B2C and B2B when I first started the agency. How I pivoted to just only B2B was I was just getting a lot more signals because I was active on all social channels. But the ironic part was a lot of people, as far as agency goes, were focused on Facebook and Instagram and those channels. And
Yeah.
I was as well, but then I ran the Google Analytics and I was getting 10x the traffic from LinkedIn versus those channels. And it was all organic. So I'm like, wow, I should just double down on that channel.
Yeah.
And then basically through the experience and it was not as tapped into or saturated when I first joined back in 2015, 2016. So I'm like, well, this is a really competitive edge that, a lot of people in my space aren't on there. So then I focused on that platform. And as I realized growing my own brand on that platform, since I'm a B2B business, then I should help other B2B businesses because then I can rinse and repeat the processes that led me to success for my clients.
Very good. Now you've generated over 100 million content views. What would you recommend as some of the if
Mhm.
someone just needed a quick start to start building up their brand? I know many people
Mhm.
who are really getting into LinkedIn now. We've been on it for years, but people haven't
Mhm.
actively been posting.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes, when you post, it's kind of like
Mhm.
about yourself or your company or so on, and that's like, oh, that's
Mhm.
nice, but it's
Mhm.
not necessarily going to get you business. So
Yeah.
so when to get that, like, 100 million content views, it's a lot of views. Like, what was your path to
Mhm.
get there?
Well, I'll be totally candid. A lot of that's from a few viral posts that just popped, and I got millions and millions and millions of views. I mean, I had one post that got almost 30 million views on
Yeah.
just one post with that. So, that's the
Well,
biggest thing. Yeah.
to your point, there's, like, a really interesting story. So do you remember the video game Angry Birds from
Mhm.
days back,
Mhm.
right? So that
Yeah.
was, like, the 20th or 30th game that app developer actually created, and then they'd been
Mhm.
building and building and building. Nothing was
Mhm.
taken. They built this and boom, everything just, like,
Yeah.
went sky high. So
Yeah.
to your point about, some certain things going viral, yeah,
Mhm.
let's go a little bit deeper into that to see, like, what were there certain characteristics, components of
Um,
what a viral
yeah.
post was?
Yeah, with viral, I mean, you just got to go through a lot of experimentation and be okay with some of those posts just being absolute flops. And some of
Yeah.
them could pop with that. And then I think you need to kind of be detached from the outcome because if you're making a post and expecting it to go viral and it doesn't, I mean, that can really hurt your morale with it. The biggest
Yeah.
thing to me is to make a post go viral, it needs to be emotionally charged. I mean, it has to do something that's going to elicit an emotional response more than an intellectual response. I mean,
Yeah.
I can give insights and information and educate people, which is great. I mean, you totally need to do that with your content. But if I want something to spread, I have to elicit a strong emotion for them to want to share it or engage with it with a bunch of people. And you know, if you think about certain emotions that you want to hit on, you know, that elicit that particular response to go viral, laughter, you know, anything that's kind of, you know, humorous or funny is always going to spread because it's contagious. You always got to think in real life, it's contagious too. If somebody else is laughing, you start laughing, you pick up on that. Also,
Yeah.
it could be anger, which is, you know, that's polarizing, but it does spread if it's a
Yeah.
strong emotional anger response with that. And
Yeah.
then something that's heartfelt or joyous is a, you know, positive response that everybody's going to share with that.
I've heard a lot of other people who are having success on LinkedIn
Hmm.
use somewhat of a formulaic approach to their posts, and
Hmm.
you can kind of detect some of the patterns. Is
Hmm.
that a strategy that you found to work also? And if so,
Hmm.
what are some of the characteristics of the posts aside from the
Hmm.
emotion, but maybe
Hmm.
a structure, a hook
Uh-huh.
to get them to
Yeah.
open, things like that? What have you learned about those?
I mean, the algorithm always keeps changing on what the format's going to be favored and what's going to get the most engagement. So content that I used to get a ton of engagement on, you know, years past isn't getting as much engagement on the platform. I mean, LinkedIn's they're starting to push more in-depth content, which is great because it's a professional platform and you're giving more valuable insights. Um, I don't know if I have a set formula, like I'm being that scientific. I think it's just more intuitive that I've had so many repetitions of posting content. I naturally have a hunch of like what will get it, what type of engagement, what format really works with that. I know at this time, what I see get a lot of engagement are LinkedIn polls. So those are really favored on the algorithm. And also with, well, it's polls and then carousels. Carousels are like those swipe files where you can give, you know,
Yeah.
educational content. Those are two I see get a lot of engagement. And they really can drive, you know, potential business opportunities too. Because the cool thing is when you make those polls, you either can make it a general type question, you know, just any professional would want to answer, and you're going to get it to go more viral, or you could be more specific on your exact value proposition and you could gather more intelligence from your audience. I mean, that's like I could make a poll about, are you generating leads on LinkedIn? Yes or no? And then if people respond no, I can click on it and I can find every single person that responded no. And there's a potential opportunity, you know, for me to have a sales type conversation or prospecting type conversation with that. So that can
That's a
really
very
lead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really smart technique. Um,
Mhm.
now, we're gonna talk about how, like, how to actually create the content, maybe a process to do that in a moment. But
Mhm.
can you talk about the difference between your personal LinkedIn
Mhm.
posts, your personal account,
Mhm.
and then your company account?
Mhm.
And I frame this way because I know a lot of people that I speak with. I remember, when they were starting to get into LinkedIn, they're like, I don't want my personal brand out there. I want to really
Mhm.
promote the company, and I
Yeah.
want my team member to promote the company. And
Yeah.
it almost feels a little counterintuitive because unless you're
Mhm.
Apple or Microsoft or Google,
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
follow people, right?
Yeah.
And so, what is your advice about growing a personal brand versus company brand?
Um, I probably you wouldn't want to take my exact approach because my company is my name, so I'm
Okay.
more intertwined with it than typical. But if
Yeah.
I pull back and I was doing it more of a corporate entity of a company that had a totally different brand that was kind of separated from the founder's name, I mean, through your personal profile, it's really just about thought leadership and just giving your personalized insights that you've learned through your experiences, you know, and failures and successes with that. Um, Through the company page, those are more about, I would say, updates, product updates, you know, news updates, anything going on with the company. And
Yeah.
then you also kind of want to put a spotlight on people that the behind the scenes, you know, of your culture and the people that are involved with the company to also make that more personable. You can make the company page more personable, but you have to make it reflect everybody involved in the organization and not just a select few. And I would say companies really need to adopt allowing their employees and amplifying their employees' personal brands. Because as you said, people buy from people. And if you have a company that has essentially a bunch of micro influencers, you know, pushing your brand, I mean, they're essentially your ambassadors. and they can really drive a lot of awareness and growth with that. And I think they
Mhm.
might be a little cautious or paranoid just because they're like, well, if they build it up so much, then they'll leave us or whatever, with that. I wouldn't worry about that, honestly. I mean, it's all about helping them grow in their professional journey, and then at the same time, it'll help your brand be more humanized.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is to take that human approach also. And
Hmm.
I've always felt, as a leader, your job is actually is to elevate your staff and
Hmm.
to help them get their next job. You hope that that
Hmm.
next job is with you still, but sometimes it's
Yeah.
not. And I
Hmm.
think that just goodwill carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
How do you approach a content calendar? Is that something that
Hmm.
you do? Do you have a layout of, okay,
Hmm.
here's what I'm going to post on a regular basis, and
Hmm.
what's the structure for that?
Um, I would say I also don't fit that because I'm personally posting that content. If I was a corporate entity, I'd have a much more structured approach. And if I had a lot of team members involved with the creative process of posting the content, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I really keep a pulse on is just diversifying the content. That's what I'm always tracking. So, in a multitude of ways. So, I'm always going back and forth between posts that are more emotional based and that will get overall more engagement, and then posts that are more educational and thought leadership. And I continually go back and forth between those forms of content. And then I'll
Mhm.
start to see, maybe I've made some posts and they're more in depth and my engagement overall is going down. Well, now I need to layer in a viral post to boost that back up and get me favored on the algorithm again.
Mhm. And the
Um,
viral post being something that's got emotional, so can you give us an example
yeah.
of, like, what a post like that was? Just maybe if you
Mhm.
remember a couple of lines from it?
Um, well, I know the one that went most viral was actually a poll, but it was an image with that, and it was a generalized thing. It was just asking, when did you first start your career? Or when was your first job? Or how old were you when you started your first job? And that's a
Mm,
super generalized post that any professional could engage with that post.
mm,
And it actually had, I haven't used that format in a while. I'd have to test to see if it still has validity, but it actually was an image, and how they voted was through a different emoji. So there was date range, there was age ranges. 16 to 20 would be a thumbs up, 20 to 24 would be an insightful emoji. And that's how that post spread, because they had to interact with it in a unique way to
mhm,
basically vote on it. So,
mhm.
yeah.
Very interesting. So in
Mhm.
terms of, calendar, if you don't have a very specific agenda on what you post on set days, what about
Mhm.
frequency? Is there, you post
Mhm.
at least once a day, a couple times a week,
Um,
couple times
yeah,
a
I
day?
mean, I would say that I post twice, 1 to 2 times a day. And if I do
Mhm.
post 2 times in one day, I space it out by 5 to 6 hours.
Okay.
So that's, and then the other thing is, this is big for people just trying to keep up with the frequency or volume of the content. Just because you made a post, in the past doesn't mean you can't repurpose and reuse that content. Okay. I mean, there's only a fraction of the people that are actually going to see the organic, impressions of what you post.
Yeah.
And so basically, what I'll do is I'll filter my content. I'll look at my analytics, and I'll see, okay, every post that's 4 months or older, what got the most engagement? And then I'll
Mm,
cycle those posts back through. And then at the same time, I'm creating new posts in between those posts. So that helps me create fresh content, but it also helps me stay up with the frequency and double down with my content winners, based on the data to stay, top of mind.
I think that's a really, clever approach. I've seen other people, talk about this as well, where it's almost like riding a bicycle. So when you start, you're in first gear, you got to produce a lot of the initial content. But then once you
Yeah.
get going, you actually see, well, these five keep hitting, the
Hmm.
mark. And as the number of followers grows, those are people that have never seen some of those
Yep.
posts. And so
Yep.
then when you repost something like that 4 months later, a related
Hmm.
post, it
Hmm.
to many people, it's a very fresh post. And it's going to resonate because it
Yeah.
resonated pretty strongly in the past.
Yeah.
So you touched on engagement, and
Hmm.
so you clearly look at engagement
Hmm.
metrics like the number of likes or the number
Hmm.
of comments. Um,
Hmm.
but I've also found that lurkers become clients, like people who never actively engage with your
Hmm.
brand. I
Hmm.
regularly get people
Hmm.
sending me, "Hey, I need help with my search engine optimization or executive
Yeah.
coaching to elevate me. I mean, built and sold
Hmm.
3 SaaS companies. So
Yeah.
but they don't always interact with the posts. So can you
Hmm.
share
Hmm.
how someone should actually go about measuring their success uh,
Hmm.
in terms of, if you can't get
I
paid in likes?
mean, that would be, I don't know if you're like talking about doing like one-on-one. Well, you're talking about inbound opportunities, right? Like they're coming to you as just an inbound opportunity because you could
That
look,
yeah,
yeah, you
that's
could look
that's
on
one of the
LinkedIn
ways. Yeah.
because you could look on LinkedIn. I mean, if you have the upgraded, I always use upgraded LinkedIn too. I always use Sales Navigator. I
Hmm.
like that's absolutely paramount if you're really trying to drive. I mean, not really on the content side. Now I'm kind of getting to pipeline and lead generation, but Sales Navigator is absolutely key. And with that, also you can see who viewed your profile recently with that.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
that could be an opportunity. I mean, they could become inbound, or you could do an outbound, outreach to them because you saw that they recently viewed your profile, and there could be an opportunity there. I mean, that would
Okay.
be really time consuming to do that, but if it's, the right account, because I mean, it also depends on what stage you are too, because if you're first starting off or you're not that built up, you're not going to have a ton of profile views to go through. I mean, I have hundreds of thousands. That would take forever for me to parse through all that data to find
Yeah.
really good quality prospects in
Yeah, yeah.
there.
So what are the best ways to go forward with like understanding
Mhm,
your metrics?
mhm,
Like LinkedIn will show you the number of people that viewed a post, so you
mhm,
could see that as a
mhm,
potential source of, oh yeah, this worked out pretty well, versus
mhm,
other posts that don't. I can tell you
mhm,
from my own experience, the posts that generate the most views and likes
mhm,
are
mhm,
not the ones that get me business, but those
mhm,
big views and likes are the ones when I am at an event, when I
mhm.
meet some people and we happen to be like take a picture of us at lunchtime, and
Yep,
we just
yep,
share that, and it shares across their network and everything. And people are like, oh yeah, I saw you at and
yeah,
that's kind of it. Like there's no
yeah,
business transaction. It's just like a hey, yeah, I
mhm,
saw you there.
yeah,
Those tend to get the most.
yeah,
Um, Also, personal stories I find work really well. They work well for me. I posted one
mhm,
recently about work-life balance and how I made sure when my kids were
mhm,
growing up, I coached their soccer teams and stuff like that, and never lose sight of what's important. That one got
mhm,
a lot of traction.
yeah,
So, that's not going to generate business, and a lot of people are
mhm,
here on LinkedIn to get business. So, what would be your
mhm,
recommendation on the
mhm.
mix of the type of content that you put in?
So I mean, yeah, when you're doing the educational type content and the thought leadership content, you should personally reach out to anybody that engages with that content because there's strong intent, interest
Mm,
around your value proposition and what you do in the marketplace with it. Now, if it's a general, personalized uh, post, I wouldn't even reach out to those specific people with that. But if I,
mhm,
make a very thoughtful post that's educating and giving value, and I get 20 to 30 engagements, I should personally reach out to each one of those people and just start a conversation. And I mean, for me, the biggest driver, it's not really through the content of what's going to drive you business, an actual pipeline. It's through direct messages and conversations with prospects, really. I
mhm,
mean, I don't, when I make posts, I don't even have any expectations of actually generating any tangible business from making the post. Now, when
mhm.
I'm reaching out to a prospect and I'm having a one-on-one type conversation, that's where the more sales type process gets started for me. That's how I look at it.
Let's say someone does engage with you on a post. They put and it's a thought leadership post, and they
Hmm.
post a comment, and the
Hmm.
comment could be anything. What
Hmm.
is your message to them? What do you say when you do the
Hmm.
outreach?
Hmm. I think it's basically probing them and asking questions on their current process, or like, did they find value in this, or what's your current go-to-market strategy, or what tools are you currently using, and just making a more consultative conversation, and then taking it from there. So just probing them and asking questions and letting them speak. I mean,
Mhm.
anytime I'm going to talk to a prospect, I want them to talk the majority of the time so I can
Right.
diagnose,
Yeah.
their current situation and the proper solution for where they're at and what we
Yeah.
do.
I think
Mhm,
what there's like all of us are getting these connection requests. You accept it, and like within
mhm,
seconds, you've got a sales pitch, in, and you're like, "Oh my
mhm,
god!" Unfortunately,
mhm,
they're kind of spoiling the whole LinkedIn pie for everybody.
mhm,
I think a lot of people are starting to filter that out. Um,
mhm,
let's switch a little bit to paid ads on LinkedIn. And
Uh,
so that's something that I think your agency does and helps
mhm,
people
mhm,
explore. Um, can you describe what that approach is, and
uh-huh.
does it work? Does it work? Because you hear mixed things.
Well, we don't do it for clients if it didn't work. I've done paid advertising internally. So I've been
Okay.
testing, and this is recent actually, because a lot of, our lead generation has been focused on pure outbound, whether that be through LinkedIn or email marketing. So that's our primary growth drivers. Now I have been testing paid ads because it has infinite scale. I mean, there's only so many messages or emails I can send per day, but I can
Mhm.
show my advertisement unlimited people. But the caveat is the expense with it. So when I've done the LinkedIn paid ads, I mean, I'm looking at, and I will do a LinkedIn lead form too, and actually capture their data through LinkedIn, because I could get a lot of traffic to a page, but it's not going to get many conversions as overall traffic to conversion rate with that. But if I get
Mhm.
them to click on an ad and it has that lead form and it auto populates their information, it's a lower acquisition cost. That being said, it's still really expensive. I mean, I've spent, around 150 to $200 per lead with that, which some business models, depending on the deal size, that could be viable. It's like, if I'm doing $250,000 or half a
Yeah.
million dollar deals, like, well, that's totally worth it. Let's just take it to the moon with that.
Mhm.
So really depends on your deal size. What I'm looking at is I'm leveraging the paid ads more for a retargeting aspect to bring down my cost per acquisition. So I have the pixel set up, with LinkedIn through my website. And then also I could do like basically a LinkedIn ad that's just to get engagement. Like let's say and this is what I'm experimenting with you, like right now, I'm actually doing this experiment. So like I have a newsletter. So I could do a paid advertisement to that newsletter. And then LinkedIn allows me to retarget every single person that clicked on that ad with another ad. So basically, I'm collecting all this data of people that are engaging with one format or one piece of content, and then I'm going to retarget them to actually get them on a call and be a lead with that. And that's
Yeah.
lowering my acquisition costs. But really, I would look at it as retargeting, unless you 5 million plus annual revenue with there. It really depends on your budget. If you're wanting to start completely cold to generate leads with, it's going to get really expensive. But retargeting, there's
Yeah.
value there.
That's what I found with LinkedIn ads also. They are very expensive, and usually it's right around that range. I remember,
Hmm.
in one of my companies, we were spending in the neighborhood of 150 to $175 per lead. And
Yeah.
so, when you think about it, how many of those leads actually turn into qualified meetings?
Yeah.
You could literally spend
Hmm.
thousands, if not
Oh yeah.
$10,000 getting a qualified lead. But if
Oh
your
yeah.
sale price is $500,000,
Yeah.
that's part of the cost of doing business. And so I
Yeah.
think understanding your lifetime value of a customer and your customer
Hmm.
acquisition cost, you
Hmm.
could then start to, and your gross margins, you can start to analyze what your customer acquisition cost should be. So,
Yeah.
some numbers there.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about the measuring your success as you grow your brand. I mean, I think
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of people who would love to have 100,000 followers, like you've
Hmm.
got. What has that
Hmm.
meant for your business as you've grown that?
Hmm.
And oh, by the way, over what period of time did that happen?
So it's been a while. I mean, it's literally been since 2016 to now with that,
Okay, so
which
about 7, 8 years. Yeah.
yeah, and if I was in the beginning, I mean, that's all I was worried about was just growing my followers and just doing that. But I really wasn't focused on pipeline or developing my business or training my team. And, I mean, all the true responsibilities of running a successful company. It's like I can't be on LinkedIn all day doing there's a million tactics I could do. And I know I could
Yeah.
boost that up even more because I'm seeing a lot of people now it's really about engaging with influencers and being a part of that social circle because there's a lot of great creators that are coming on the LinkedIn. And if
Yeah.
you can trade engagement with them and get favored on the algorithm with them, that can skyrocket, your followership. I'm seeing a lot of young creators go through the roof with their followers with that. But
Yeah.
I'm also under the impression that their audience is really general and it could be like solopreneurs or people that don't have established companies with that, but they're getting a lot of volume with the followers.
I agree with that wholeheartedly because I do see
Mhm,
a lot of folks that, honestly, like they've kind of
mhm,
gotten this big follower base, and
mhm,
they've kind of, to some degree, they've deluded themselves into thinking that the size of their follower base has something to
mhm.
do with their
Yeah,
actual deliverable skill set. And I think there's a
yeah,
lot of folks,
yeah.
like for example, I know I've got more
Mhm,
time now because I'm an executive coach. But I tell you, when
mhm,
I was building my companies, my SaaS businesses, I barely
mhm.
had any time to do any kind of social activity.
Yeah,
But I can navigate
knew
how
a
to how
lot behind the scenes of like actually running a successful business. Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so,
Mhm,
you talk to some folks, and I've had them on our live streams and podcasts where,
mhm,
they have built 100+ million-dollar companies. They're not
mhm.
really that active on social. They might have a
Yeah,
couple thousand followers, or they might have more followers because people just know their brand and they're following them.
yes, yep.
But yeah,
Yeah, having a balance there. You wanna be I mean, you wanna have that, business acumen and working behind the scenes to build a true company and infrastructure and all that in place, but then you
yeah,
wanna stay still top of mind. I mean, we
yeah.
could say that, but then we look at Elon Musk. He's building pretty legitimate companies, and he's pretty active on social, but he's a rare breed, with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
and certainly creates enough controversy that keeps him in the news too, so there
yeah.
is that. Um,
Mhm,
so when it comes to actually,
mhm,
expanding your reach,
mhm,
you mentioned that there's some ways we talked about some of the ways you could do that. What would
mhm,
be your advice as first steps for someone who's really trying to get ramped up
mhm,
and building their brand, whether it be personal
mhm,
or their company brand on LinkedIn? What's, like, maybe the
mhm.
first 2 or 3 things that you should really pay attention to?
I mean, with their post, they really need to be focused on driving the engagement within the first 30 minutes to an hour, because that's the critical time on when LinkedIn's going to favor your content with that. So if you can do something where you have a hook or get somebody to leave a comment or tagging people that you personally know in your network that will engage
Yeah.
with your content, you need to totally do that. And anytime someone makes a comment, commenting back quickly and getting those threads built up with that, because if you're really active on that post for the first 30 minutes to an hour on getting other people involved with it, it's going to push it up and it's going to be favored for a couple days just by doing that. So that's pretty key with that.
That's a very important tip. I mean, I think a lot of people might just post, go away, do work for a while, and come back in the evening and take a look at it, and by then they've kinda lost that opportunity to
Yeah,
actually engage while
yeah.
people were still in that moment. So,
Yeah, and
very
that's a
smart.
big thing with to really drive up your company page engagement, interactions, and all that. You really need to have all your employees be advocates for it. If your company makes a post and all of your employees engage with that post, reshare that post, I mean that's automatically going to get that super favored on the algorithm and get
Yeah.
a lot of performance, because unfortunately company pages are much more their posts are much more suppressed organically than
Mhm.
personal profiles. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're not really thoughtful with it or doing, very tactical, you're only going to get, 1,000 to 2,000 impressions, even if you have a ton of followers. It's kind of like Facebook. It's like, oh, I got to build up all these followers, then I almost have to boost it or pay to reach the people that I build up with that. So,
Right.
but if you have your employees as advocates for it, that'll push that organic reach.
Yeah, that's good too. So if you have that, depth of people number of people in your company, then certainly them engaging with your brand, that would be really good too. Let
Mhm,
me just ask a little bit about the AI posts. I know that
mhm,
for me, I see, I mean, to me, it's just so obvious that some people are just using AI to write content
mhm,
because there's
mhm,
no even fine tuning with the prompts. You could almost go to
mhm.
ChatGPT and say, "Write me a quick social media post on
Yeah,
XYZ," and cookie cutter, standardized formats, similar
yeah,
language, very the structure is the same, and people are
yeah,
doing that for comments also. So it's almost like they're
yeah.
taking, like, I'll see people take.
Mhm.
I don't have proof they're doing it, but it sure does look this way.
Yeah,
Where they'll take
yeah,
a copy of my, article and say, "Here's a post, what can I comment on it?" And I've actually seen people who have
mhm.
almost identical comments. I'm like, "Oh god, you both are using social media."
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
AI to do that.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? I mean, I have
Um,
opinions. I'm curious to hear yours.
I actually just posted on my newsletter about this topic this morning before I got on here. I
Yeah,
mean, the
okay.
biggest thing, I mean, I think generative AI and ChatGPT are very vital, to compete in today's environment. But I do think people in marketing are getting much too reliant on it, and they're being too lazy now
I
that
think
they have it with
keyword
it. The
lazy, big
biggest
word right there. Yeah.
the biggest thing to me is leveraging it for the ideation phase. So I think
Yeah.
it's the most powerful thing I think about it is coming up with ideas on content. Hey, what are 20 topic ideas on B2B marketing as an expert on LinkedIn or something? And then it
Yeah.
just rips through all these different ideas. Now I have a framework, and then through because it doesn't know, it's like ChatGPT and all this, it can scour infinite amounts of information, but it doesn't download your memories, your experiences, and patterns that you've personally seen through those experiences.
Yeah.
So having that framework of this topic, but then stopping there and just interjecting your own personal experience and your own viewpoint with it, I think is a great combination, because you'll never hit creative, roadblock, writer's block, but then you also will be very authentic and give personalized insights.
I use it the same way, and I find that is so productive when you use it
Mhm.
as an assistant, not as a crutch. And
Yeah.
so I will do it to ideate, give me 10 ideas on XYZ topic. But there's another
Yep.
feature inside ChatGPT. It's called
Hmm.
custom instructions. And
Hmm.
if you go to settings, you can add your custom. I think it's called customized chat.
Hmm.
GPT, now they renamed it,
Hmm.
and you can give it very specific instructions. Like, I am an executive coach who has built 3 companies, who has done this. I live in the Washington D.C. metropolitan area. I talk about this. Here's my
Uh,
writing style, and you just give it a really detailed
yeah.
background about you. And
Yeah.
then when you go in and you try to get it to write some stuff for you, man,
Hmm.
it is
Hmm.
night and day. Big
Yeah.
difference, and you can't
Yeah.
really. So much harder to detect, but it's also a lot closer to your own voice.
Yeah, and that's the big thing too. I mean, I actually was talking, on some prospecting calls with companies that were trying to scale creating AI generated content with it. And
Yeah.
basically you would import a lot every single post that you've ever done, and it would read through that to understand the nuances of your voice with that to be more aligned. But that's only if you have a ton of content for it to gather that intelligence on, your brand voice. If you don't, I don't feel like it's going to be on point. But if you do, yeah, it can be pretty accurate with that on
Yeah.
representing your voice.
Very, very, very important. I
Mhm.
just wanted to pop in. There's a question that came up in the chat.
Okay.
It's actually about, well, like my other, like search engine optimization. I will just answer this real quick.
Okay.
Mohammed asked, like, can you elaborate on the importance of backlinks as link building, and link building as a growth factor for any website? It is one of the most important things. Actually, getting backlinks that from quality sites that point to you will increase your rankings very quickly. There's numerous ways to do this, and you could actually go to my site, morebusiness.com. Just click on the SEO coaching button. There's a bunch of articles, tactics, strategies that you can use to follow that. And if you're interested, I have a course also that you can take.
Mhm.
So thank you for that question. If we have any other questions, happy to take those right now. But Patrick, how can people reach you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Patrick Burns. I'm the guy with the blue blazer. I don't think I look too bad in my picture, but
All right.
and then you can reach out to me by email at hello@patrickburns.co.
All right. Excellent.
Mhm.
Patrick, it was a very insightful conversation about growing your brand on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in or watching the recording. Thanks again. We'll catch you on the next live stream.
Thanks, Raj.